Some interesting new developments on the China front. As we know, there's been an active effort amongst Republican lawmakers like Senator Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton, Dan Crenshaw, and others in order to introduce legislation that would allow Americans to sue the Chinese government for damages, a la the way that the legislation that was pushed in order to allow 9/11 victims to sue the Saudi government for their complicity in that attack, as well as some Republican attorneys general. Now the Chinese government is actually responding and threatening sanctions against American lawmakers. This is something very much out of the playbook for the Chinese government's economic warfare, and something that just came across my radar very much this morning in the same vein is, of course, we're talking about Huawei decoupling Americans' economies from China. Chinese Global Times editor-in-chief, which is effectively kind of a shot across the bow from the Chinese government.
And this is state-run media.
This is a state-run media, and it's considered noteworthy enough that this threat that Bloomberg and other people are putting it out as news, saying, based on what I know, if the U.S. further blocks key technology supply to Huawei, China will activate the unreliable entity list, restrict or investigate U.S. companies such as Qualcomm, Cisco, Apple, and suspend the purchase of Boeing airplanes, a threat to the tune of literally hundreds of billions of dollars. So it just goes to show you that on the economic front, things are very much heating up. And the thing, though, the dynamic that gets me is that in China, they're like, if you threaten our company, we'll go after yours and we'll destroy you. Here, the executives of Qualcomm, Cisco, and Apple are going to be begging the government, please let us keep doing business in China.
Absolutely.
Please don't do anything to make Xi Jinping
And very likely they will listen.
They'll listen. Trust me.
Even in this administration, which is like basing their whole re-election on China, right? And look, let's be clear, a lot of this is bad faith. They want to shift blame from their own terrible response, right? I mean, this legislation about being able to sue China, okay, all well and good. Are you also going to be able to sue our own federal government for their failed response? It's like sort of a Pandora's box. But putting all of that aside, even as hawkish as this administration wants to sound, and in some cases has actually been, like a Buy American order to bring back critical supply lines, medical supplies that we have all learned we should be making in the country, even that they're like, well, and not even to do it immediately, like over time,
and that's
gradually bringing it back, and they're still like, well, that might just upset them too much. I mean, they're playing a different game.
No, this is brilliant because they know that you go after Qualcomm, Cisco, and Apple, and Boeing, and the amount of business interests in China, these people will be on the next plane to Washington, no matter what pandemic is going on, being like, you guys you can't force us not to do business in China. I mean, how are we going to make the iPhone for what we make the iPhone for? I mean, they'll pull that one out. They're like, you like your iPhone? You like how much it costs? I'm like, no, it's still kind of expensive.
Yeah.
They're like, do you want to pay $100 more a year?
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I'm like, honestly, yeah.
They've convinced us all that we can't possibly do without this, and that the benefits to our lives are so great. And the thing that they point to is cheap prices, as if that is the end-all, be-all
of a society.
Of a society, that we have no other goals, that as long as prices are going down, that's all anyone should care about, as if the issue in America is that we don't have enough cheap Chinese-made crap. Like, that is not the problem. Not that the iPhone is really crap. I get a lot of use.
I love the iPhone.
Let's be honest.
Thank you, iPhone.
By the way, I just want to make it clear on the, if you can sue China, can you also sue the federal government? Like, if that's the case, I'm actually fine with that. If there's negligence and you can prove it, I said that, that's opening Pandora's box. I'm actually okay with that. Something tells me these Republican senators are not, though.
But that's the thing, though. Actually, one of the things that they have tried to do is create personal liability for many of the this is actually a Warren thing as well that actually proposed from some populist members on the right, is making regulators in terms of oversight be personally liable for the signing off on the distribution of funds and on making sure that they're actually integrating oversight into their work. Oh, totally. I think that absolutely should be the case. But I should say, that is something that's being pushed. And I thought in the Saudi case it was totally appropriate. I think in this case, I think it's completely appropriate. But broader, I think the crazy part is that we live in a country where we have a dynamic where the Chinese get this totally, right? It's like you go after their interests, they'll come after ours. Here, they come after yours, and you have the moneyed interests and the elite and everybody, NBA, everybody's like, oh, please, you got to tamp this thing down. We got to give these people everything they want, because otherwise you're going to have to pay more. And we have not been able to psychologically get over the fact that paying more is worth it. If, I don't know, you can make vitamins in your own country, or make sure your old people don't die.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, if you have jobs that pay good wages and you can afford to buy things, right? That's a good thing too. That's what we used to have. That has gone, downhill as we've sent so much overseas, and also automation has tied into that as well. The other part of this is all of this gets viewed through this partisan weird lens now, where you may have previously had Democrats who would actually, have a more hawkish position. Their signals have been scrambled by Trump's at least rhetoric around China. It's complicated because, like I said, there's a lot of bad faith about seizing on this as a political issue on the right to try to distract from Trump's own failings, so nobody wants to give them any credit. But everyone should view a threat to sanction U.S. lawmakers as a serious development and shot across the bow, regardless of your view of the issue, partisan affiliation, et cetera.
And, there are some neocons who are actually going full-blown, it seems to me they're trying to advocate regime change from China. I actually think it's very important for people like me and others who want a confrontational relationship economically with China to make sure that we want nothing to do with those people. They're the last thing on earth.
Is that a real thing? That's insane.
So it's not overt, but the undertones are there. And you can be like, well, the Chinese people don't support their own government. I'm like, really? I think they do. And that's fine. That's okay. I don't blame them for it. But it's more about, I'm like, listen, I just want less economic intertwinement between America and China. If you're actually trying to push some sort of real defense Cold War stuff on here, that literally, look, the regime policy against the Soviet Union was regime change. That's another thing. A little bit differently under Kissinger and Nixon, but broadly overall, it was, we want to destroy the communist regime. No, we do not need to go down that path. Again, look, I want the CCP to party like it's 1996, but I don't really care if they still stay in power.
Right.
That's the one thing that I think needs to be made very clear. And I accept that criticism from people who are like, oh, you're beating the war drum.
No, that's important. No,
very important. Our economy to be more resilient, and a key part of that is China.
That's a bad faith argument as well. Anyone who watches the show and knows your views and my views on foreign policy and war making would find that to be ridiculous.
That's right.
But there's bad faith attacks all the way around. But no, look, it's very simple, and it shouldn't be partisan. We should have less dependence for critical things, we should have less dependence on anyone overseas. And it happens to be that China is, the largest in terms of where those supply lines have gone. It's actually very simple and very basic, and we want to be able to make things here. We want to have good jobs here that are well-paying, even if that means paying a little bit more for your smartphone.
There you go.
God forbid.
All right.
More Rising for you after this.